Good evening, participants from India and Bangladesh, and good morning, participants from USA, Slovenia, and Canada. This is Berin Lukas, Head, Department of Sociology and Industrial Relations, St. Joseph's College, Bengaluru. On behalf of our Principal, Reverend Father Dr. Victor Lobo, staff and students, I extend to you a very warm welcome to this webinar, COVID-19 Pandemic, Labor, Livelihood and Rights. It is also my privilege to extend a very warm welcome to our speaker, to KRISHNAN. We have 552 registered participants. I thank all of you for this overwhelming response. I am sure each one of you will have new insights and new learning from this webinar. Once again, and thank you.
And dear students, it's my privilege to introduce Dr. KRISHNAN, distinguished alumni, former faculty of St. Joseph's College, Bengaluru, graduated from St. Joseph's College in the year 1994 with BA in History, Economics, Political Science. After his graduation from our college, he proceeded to Jawaharlal Nehru for his higher studies and entered active politics through the Students' Federation of India, of the Communist Party of India, Marxist. After completing his MA Political Science, MPhil, and PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru, he also qualified UGC National Education Test exam in 3 subjects. During his student days in JNU, he was elected Vice President and later President of Jawaharlal Nehru Students' Union. He faced police brutalities many times and was also a political prisoner at the Tihar jail. After his PhD, Dr. DR.VIJOO joined St. Joseph's College in the year 2005 as head of the newly established postgraduate department of political science. He had earlier refused a teaching assignment at JNU. He quit St. Joseph's College in the year 2008 to become a full-time worker of the CPIM. Interestingly, the founding General Secretary of CPIM, veteran freedom fighter Sri P. Sundaraya, was also an alumni of our college during 1930 BSc batch of PCM. Dr. KRISHNAN has written extensively on agrarian and labor issues. He has led a number of labor and agrarian agitations. He is a joint secretary of All India Kissan Sabha in 2010. He also led the famous farmers rally, the Kissan rally from Nasik to Mumbai, covering 186 kilometers during February 2019. This event had made national and international headlines. Dr. KRISHNAN was elected to the Central Committee of the CPIM, the youngest person to hold this post as an invitee. This outstanding farmer and labor rights leader has been in the forefront of various struggles. Hearty welcome to you, Dr. KRISHNAN, for the first international webinar in industrial relations. Please take off.
Thank you. It is an honor for me to be coming back to a platform provided by the St. Joseph College and to speak to a wide audience not just in India, but across the globe. I thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you on COVID pandemic, labor, livelihood, and rights. I think it's a very important topic that has been put forward to me, and I would like to place few of my views on these related issues. Before entering into the main issues of labor, livelihood, and rights, I would also like to begin by briefly mentioning about the context in which the COVID pandemic struck. As far as India is concerned, when COVID pandemic struck, we already were a country with a huge agrarian crisis and also an economic crisis that was going on in here. So you had a recession-like situation. We all know that since '95, according to official results, official reports, more than 4 lakh in distress have committed suicide in our country. And this figure itself is not the truth. It is much more, because the tenant farmers, the landless, women cultivators, Adivasi cultivators, and such are not included in this. And many states also fudge data, so they are not giving the true picture. So already we have an crisis in our country. And in the last 5 years, we have seen how there has been increased unemployment. In 45 years, the highest unemployment rate was during these 5 years. And also a recession-like situation wherein large of our population lost their jobs. To take an instance, from automobile industry itself, more than 10 lakh lost their jobs. Around 1 million people lost their jobs. In textile industry, about 3 million or 30 lakh people lost their jobs. So we had a situation wherein there was an agrarian crisis and also an economic recession kind of situation where unemployment and poverty was already there. In the global hunger index, also we fared dismally. Huge numbers of malnutrition deaths. And for instance, in a state like Maharashtra alone, in a year, about 21,000 children die of malnutrition. The situation in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, and all is also much worse. And even while we are trying to make a big hype about a digital India, even now a child like Santoshi in Jharkhand is crying out for food and dying of starvation. So that is a situation that we were already in. In 2014, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the BJP did make a lot of promise that they would implement policies. They would implement policies which would lead to overcoming the agrarian crisis. There would be Achhe Din for all sections. Unfortunately, the last 5 years has not been much different, because the same set of policies have been implemented, whether it was the previous regimes or the present BJP regimes. So it is in such a circumstance that the COVID-19 pandemic struck the world. From December onwards, we have been hearing about it, that in Wuhan province in China. And within very short time, the World Health Organization and Food and Agriculture Organization and such international agencies already sent for warning to all countries that this is going to be a major crisis that humanity is going to face, and seeking that all countries prepare to face this pandemic. And it could also lead to a situation of hunger deaths in coming days. This warning was already issued much before the first case was found in the end of January. The first case in India was a student from Wuhan who returned, was found to be infected with COVID-19 in the end of January. But as far as our own country, I think we should look at the preparedness as far as dealing with this pandemic is concerned. Almost for more than 2 months, the central government was almost clueless and did nothing much to ensure that there would be an effective handling of this crisis, except for the state of Kerala, where well in advance, when the first case came in Wuhan, itself they came up with different steps to handle with the crisis, if at all people from China and other regions, infected persons are coming to Kerala, there was a preparedness to deal with. Unfortunately, that was not the situation as far as the central government is concerned. From almost this December till March 22nd, when the Janta curfew was first announced, in this period, the central government was actually busy in bringing the Citizenship Amendment Act and the related struggles that were there. A divisive agenda was being pursued, and also a huge mega event for welcoming US President Donald Trump in Ahmedabad was being organized. And even till 22nd March, an elected government in Madhya Pradesh was being actually dismantled. That these were the central government had in that particular period, and very precious time was lost by the central government in ensuring that there is a system that could actually meet the crisis and ensure that the people are one is emergency does not lead to huge loss of life, and to ensure that the pandemic doesn't lead to a loss of livelihood and create a scenario wherein there would be hunger related deaths and so on. That is the scenario in which we had this lockdown being announced. When the lockdown was announced, the farmers in our country were actually expecting a bumper harvest, because compared to the last year, almost 11% increase in acreage of wheat was there. Last year, about 29 million hectares. This time, around 33 million hectares of wheat had been sown, and a bumper harvest was being expected. By this, it was totally unplanned and unprepared. What happened for the large section of the toiling masses, the peasant workers, the migrant workers, is with a stroke of a pen or with the announcement of lockdown, 4 hours notice, it has almost ensured that all these sections are deprived of their incomes and their main source of livelihood. That is what has happened. This bumper harvest, I would like to give some figures from the field. If you compare with the first 21-day lockdown period and compare with the same period last year, the wheat that has come into the market this year, the arrivals in the market, is only 6% of what was sold last year during this. And this is not just the case of wheat. The case of other kharif crops, other rabi crops also, the situation is similar, because you find in chickpea or chana, in cauliflower, in mustard, in tomatoes, potatoes, in all these crops, and also maize and certain other crops in different regions, there has been a huge shortfall in it. Very clearly, due to the lockdown announced and the stringent manner in which it was implemented, there were no take part in the harvesting operations. There were no people equipped to actually operate. Even in case a family with its own labor did manage to harvest the crops, they were not in a position to transport these crops to the market. Even in case they managed to transport it to the market, there were no buyers in the market. So scenario which a large section of the Indian peasantry had to face. In fact, I would say 100% of the Indian peasantry had to face. The example from Uttar Pradesh is the state government had opened about 5,800 purchasing centers for procuring wheat. But from April 15th, for a period of 22 days, in a day, a purchasing unit couldn't procure wheat from even 2 farmers. That is a very clear indication as to how low the harvest has happened. On top, seasonal rains and wild animal menace and stray cattle has led to further losses for the farmers. So that is a dismal scenario as far as the peasantry is concerned. As far as the working class is concerned, we have already seen how millions of migrant workers were forced into an exodus to their homelands. That is something which probably after partition, no such incident has happened in our country, with such a huge exodus happening. And in this period, since March 24th till now, more than 700 people have died in the process of this marching back to their homelands, either due to hunger, either due to accidents, due to some of them in disrespect. And we have seen how in Aurangabad, 16 workers were run over by a train. They were sleeping on the rail lines. About 30 workers were killed in an accident in Uttar Pradesh. So there is all-round distress as far as the migrant workers are concerned. And this section of migrant workers, millions of them, are actually from agrarian backgrounds. They are small peasants back home or poor peasants back home who are not having enough earnings from cultivation, and they come out to the urban centers as well as other states for agricultural activity to complement their meager income agriculture. So they all come from either agriculture labor families or from the farmer families in different parts. So this huge number have been forced to flee from their workplaces to their hometowns in a scenario. No other country has witnessed such a situation in the entire globe. So while people who are abroad have been brought in flights, there was not a moment of thought for this large section who actually are the people who build the nation and who are actually all of them in the unorganized sector. They have been left to fend. That is the scenario we have seen. And this, all the talk of work from home and so on, or physical distancing, we saw how that is something almost impractical in a scenario where millions are forced to flee their own places to their hometowns. Work from home also is not possible in agriculture because one cannot sow seeds or water the fields sitting in their homes. So that was something, these activities for a long period were restrained by them. It is only after repeated requests that there was some relaxations in this. So this is a scenario that we have been witnessing. So what has it led to? It has led to a scenario. Already we said the unemployment were highest in the last 5 years. If you see in 45 years, the highest unemployment. But now the unemployment rate highest 27%. That is the latest figures that I have got. And the Center for Monitoring of Indian Economy has reported that 120 million or about 12 crore workers have lost their jobs. It's a huge number. The peasantry or the farmers have lost their incomes. They will also, and you have a large reserve army of who have no employment opportunities. That is the scenario that we are facing. So we had put forward certain suggestions, because this is a pandemic which we need to fight, in a united manner. It is not a time for actually politicking. So we put forward repeatedly through memorandums to the Prime Minister and the different ministers certain demands. Since all sections had lost their incomes, what was required is an income support for all poor people in our country. Earlier, we remember in 2014, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi had promised 15 lakh into everyone's account. We are not demanding 15 thing. We just made a demand that an income support of at least 10,000 rupees per month to all non-tax paying poor families should be ensured. We had requested that every person who requires food should have at least 10 kgs of food grains and other essentials should be given to them. And along with that, for the agriculture workers, under the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, using the unemployment wage clause, at least 300 rupees or minimum wage in a state, whichever is higher, should be ensured. So these were some of the demands we had made. And along with that, the Pradhan Mantri Kissan Samman Nidhi, which gives 6,000 rupees a year to farmers, we had mandated it should be increased to 18,000. What was the government's response? Government, yes, on in terms of provision of ration, they did mention that there would be ration provided to families across the country. Speaking about the question of rights. As far as rights are concerned, from 2014 itself, there has been a systematic effort to dismantle the labor rights in a way. We have all seen how 44 labor laws were being codified into 4 codes, labor codes. The fundamental right to form trade unions, it's a basic principle of Indian Constitution under Article 19, Clause 1. That itself is today being compromised in a big way. What is the manner in which the ruling class, not just a health crisis, it is also a socio-economic crisis, they seek to address it? That is something which we have to look into. We have been asking loan waivers for the farmers and so on. Nothing of that sort also has happened as yet. Rather, the central government and the banks, for instance, the CEO of the Niti Aayog, Amitabh Kant, he made an interesting statement. That is the best opportunity that has come before us. This opportunity is never going to come again. So grab this opportunity with both hands and do what? Push for labor reforms, marketing reforms, dilute land reforms, tenancy reforms, and so on. So what is happening is that in the name of labor reforms, the hard-won rights of the working class the Chicago incident where the workers were demanding 8 hours of work, 8 hours of leisure, and no cut in pay. With this slogan in 1886, now when the central government and the corporate companies, what they are demanding now is not 8 hours. They are saying 12 hours and 72 hours of work in a week. So this is the opportunity they are seeing. Scuttle all the rights of the workers. We are seeing that state after state has been nullifying all the rights of the labor. That is something to be noted. I have details of that, but given the time, I'll just mention a few of it, time constraints. Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Karnataka, Assam, literally all the BJP ruled states have labor rights, most of the labor rights, except few of them, and for a period of 3 years. It is not just the BJP government. My criticism is not only against the BJP. It is also against the governments run by certain regional parties, like Odisha is one, that Bengal Trinamool Congress is there. You have the Congress ruled states, Rajasthan and Punjab, who are all pursuing the same set of policies of increasing the working hours to 12 hours and rights of the labor. It is actually going against the spirit of the Indian Constitution that these rights are being scuttled. You can look at all states. Each of these 6 major states have come up with these kind of policies, and only the state of Kerala has clearly made a statement that the labor rights will not be scuttled. No other state has taken such a position as yet. So this is as far as the labor is concerned. The opportunities which they are seeing, there is also a big talk about 20 lakh crore package being given. This 20 lakh crore package, if you dissect and look into it more carefully, most of the projects in it are just a case of old wine in new bottle. They are all projects which have existed before, and there's nothing new as far as farmers and others are concerned. It is also to be noted that while we have been demanding loan waivers for the farmers and the rural poor, the poor itself, the central government is not willing to do it, but huge loans of defaulters like Mehul Chok Singh, Vijay Mallya, and others have been waived in the same period. So it is a matter of the approach of the government, the orientation of government. Very clearly, the government is oriented towards facilitating corporate profit, utilizing a extreme crisis where an extreme crisis and a human tragedy to push forward reforms to ensure the corporate companies can actually maximize their profits. In the field of agriculture, they are talking about privatization of the marketing system. The agriculture produce marketing committees to dilute the act. The Essential Commodity Act is being amended to ensure that many essential commodities could be procured, could be bought by private players, including people from abroad, without any limit. And this impact on the food security of the country. And in the name of one country, one market, and so on, the rights of the state. This is a federal country. In a federal system, the rights of the states are not being respected, and they are being violated with impunity. That is what we are witnessing. Land reforms, whatever limited land reforms have been taken place, that is being once again being diluted, whereby the corporate companies can take over farmland. Corporate companies can take on long lease the land belonging to the peasant. So the push is towards corporatization of agriculture, towards curtailing of labor rights in the name of liberation of the employers. That is what is happening. As students of industrial relations, you all know that an establishment, a number, whether 20 workers, then they have rights of unionization and so on. Now that is being increased to 50. And the rights of unionization and so on also are being scuttled. The right to collective bargaining, unionization, is something not just given by the Indian Constitution. It is also the International Labour Organization have also, in its declaration, they have also very clearly mentioned these guarantees. All these are being withdrawn. That is a scenario that we are having. So what we have at present is a scenario wherein the number of COVID-19 cases in India is rapidly increasing across the country. The containment, the effort done with prolonged lockdown, that has not actually, despite that, these cases are increasing. This has brought very important pointers to the way the country has been governed, and it has also exposed the neoliberal like never before, the fragility of the neoliberal model like never before. For many years, it was being sold to us that the more liberalization and more privatization will lead to more efficient services for the consumers or for all of us. What has happened with this pandemic is it has exposed the dismal state of health facilities in our country, the dismal state of housing in our country, the dismal state of food security in our country has been exposed like never before. It is a time when those countries which were in the forefront or the biggest voter policies are also now talking about government control into health sector and so on, much greater spending into social sector expenditure, into health, education, public distribution, social security, and so on. That is something Spain's experiences there. Spain has apparently gone in for greater government control over private hospitals in the time of the pandemic. So in this period, surely these issues have been put like never before. That is the greater that is greater government intervention and investment in public education, public health, in public distribution system, universal public distribution system, and social security. That is something students like you and whoever is listening, that is a direction in which we need to speak. Because the crisis that we have seen, the human tragedy, the millions of migrant workers who have been pushed into dire straits, it is what is our position going to be towards them? What is our position going to be towards the workers who have lost their jobs? What is our position going to be towards the farming community who are actually, despite the acute agrarian crisis, have been feeding the nation? They have been enough to far exceed the buffer stocks limits in our country. What is going to be our position to them? What are we going to say to them is something which all need to ponder about. Is there a different model possible? That is something which I would like to speak for a few minutes before I conclude my presentation. The small state of Kerala has won a lot of acclaim the manner in which it has dealt with the COVID-19. I mentioned earlier, when the first case was in Wuhan, when it was out, and within days itself, the Kerala Left Democratic Front government put in place a system to and a task force to look into the crisis and address the crisis if at all people infected with COVID-19 are coming into the state. How did it deal with the issue of the workers and the poor? One has to note about 55 lakh people have been given social security pension for 6 months at one go to deal with the crisis. 55 lakh, that's 5.5 million people. And under the ration system, 8.7 million, 87 lakh people have benefited from the state government's intervention, where other than the food grains, rice or wheat, other than that, a kit of 17 different items, sugar, salt, cooking oils, pulses, different spices, soaps, tea powder, and so on, whatever is required by a family in a month, everything has been given to 87 lakh people or 8.7 million people. So that is an intervention they have done. A volunteer army to deal with the crisis at hand presently and also for future crisis was built with 236,000 youth. That far exceeded 3 lakh, that is 300,000 youth into a volunteer army to deal with the pandemic and also future crisis. That is something which was not been covered under the social security pensions. For them, different amounts ranging from 1,000 to 5,000 under the Labor Welfare Board, that also has been arranged. For the migrant workers, Kerala, the small state of Kerala, more than 70% of the labor camps that were made for the workers was in Kerala alone. In the entire country, whatever number of labor camps, this is the government, central government figures submitted to the Supreme Court, not claims of the for Kerala government alone. It is the central government figures. So they have kept, and the migrant workers have been called by the Kerala as guest workers, not migrant workers. So this approach, and thousands of community kitchens have been set up across the state to ensure that no one goes hungry. So this is a different approach, and there the health facilities are also much better than in other states. Primary health facilities are much better, and for people coming from other parts of the country as well as across the globe, more than 2 lakh beds were also prepared. Here it is important to note this because I mentioned about the dismal state of housing in our country. In such a situation, all talk about the physical distancing is not very practical in large part of our country. So that is something to be noted. Here, the central government uses the term social distancing. We would like to say physical distancing and solidarity is the need of the hour. So this building of social solidarity, solidarity for the workers in distress, solidarity for the farmers in distress, the poor in distress, the most oppressed, solidarity, the most oppressed sections in distress, that is something which is required in this particular time. And the last few months of lockdown, what has happened in our country, we see a lot of time has gone to try and further polarize the country on communal lines. We need to be vigilant against such forces. This pandemic, it is not going to, we cannot wish away the pandemic. There was the Spanish flu long back, and I think post Second World War, probably this is the biggest crisis that humanity is facing. So we need to gear up for this in a united manner, and the central government has to play a significant role in that direction. In terms of, lot of people are part of charity efforts. Charity is an important sentiment, but despite organizations like ours and many individuals coming out to provide food for the hungry, unless the state intervenes in a positive manner, this cannot be addressed. The problem at hand is of a humongous magnitude. That is something the government has to understand. It has to put together all, pull up its socks, call together all state governments and different All India organizations to address this particular crisis, rather than see it as an opportunity to promote corporate profiteering, to curtail the hard-won rights of the laborers, of the working class, to curtail the rights of the peasantry. They should rather try to empower poor, empower the peasantry, the farmers, the agriculture workers, the oppressed Dalits and Adivasis of our country. That is the way forward. The way forward is not to communally polarize or divide the nation further. It is the way ahead is by building the greatest possible social solidarity. Only then we will be able to counter this pandemic and emerge victorious. I think I have tried to place most of the issues concerned. There are a few issues related to the farmers and the working class. Also, a few points that I would like to mention. As far as the buffer stocks is concerned, while there is more than 3 times the required buffer stock in the Federation of India godowns, a recent study also says about 65 lakh tons of grains in this time of need were rotting or eaten by rodents. So that is something which a recent report has come up with. People engaged in different activities, artisans, those indulging in handicrafts, weavers, traditional industries, many of them who are not even treated as workers, those home-based workers, all of them are in extreme distress. Students of industrial relations who are in different, who are important opinion builders, and also who are holding responsible positions, maybe in different companies and different establishments, they also have to have a role to play in this crisis. What is the responsibility towards the society that they play is also an important thing to ponder about in this particular time. A lot of them are coming forward because I have been engaged over the last 3 months in coordinating relief for the migrant workers. I know a lot of people are coming forward. I think much more effort is required. And we cannot win this battle against the pandemic, against hunger, against the extreme distress and the human tragedy that is unfolding, but a much greater support from the central government and different state governments. This is not the time for pushing forward anti-worker, anti-farmer, anti-worker labor reforms, anti-farmer agriculture reforms. This is something which I would like to end by saying that this is a crisis that with the best scientific facilities, we need to invest much more into research and development, into expanding our health facilities, and look forward a pro-people alternative where it would be a people-centric approach wherein health, education, food security, social security will be accessible, and also public transport will be accessible for all who need it. We need to move in that direction, and that is, I think, surely an alternative is possible. A different world is possible if we can strengthen the social solidarity that is now coming up in different parts of our country, and also link it with the international groups, these issues in a united manner. Thank you, friends. I look forward to some questions.
Mr. Dav Fod, please come online.
Sir, Dav Fod, sir, is facing some technical issues.
Yes. Mr. Neeraj, please, with the help of Maria ma'am, we will get into the questions once Dav Fod sir is back to give his concluding comments.
Okay.
You may collect the questions in the meanwhile. Question answer session. So you have listened to Dr. DR.VIJOO KRISHNAN. I would like to add that he is a polylinguist. He can manage 10 languages, and he has given his wonderful in very, very simple English. Thank you, Dr. DR.VIJOO. We'll have the concluding remarks by Mr. Dav Fod, and then the question answer session will begin. Neeraj, is everything fine?
Sir, Dav Fod, sir, is experiencing some technical issues. The concluding remarks, sir.
I'm online, Neeraj. I
He's
can manage
online.
this now.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Dav Fod, sir. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, colleagues. We had a wonderful session by our speaker, Dr. Viju Krishnan, today. He started the conversation by setting the context with respect to what had started in the year 2014. And we were talking about serious issues with the agrarian crisis, the economic crisis, farmers committing suicides, problem of automobile industry, the real estate industry collapsing over a period of the last 4 or 5 years, and that's which the pandemic came in. The entire background was such that there was a very serious financial crisis that was there in the background. Now, once the crisis started, that the COVID-19 started in January of 2019, farmers faced very serious issues with respect to a bumper crop that was waiting to be harvested, and their inability to harvest these crops because of the ability of workforce to do this, because of the lockdown that was in place. They also had severe issues with respect to markets, buyers, transportation facilities to markets, and many other such issues which made certain farmers even commit suicide. The farmers that have committed suicide runs into the lakhs. For 95.4 lakh farmers have committed suicide in the last 4 or 5 years due to these issues. And continuing from there, we have had several more farmers committing suicide. We have had several issues with respect to farmers taking on burning their crops, destroying their crops as a consequence of their inability to sell it. Working class, that is the people who are working in different industries like the manufacturing, the automobile industries, the garbage, so many other industries, and we see from using the television, we see many people walking to their homes. For example, from Delhi to UP, there were thousands, if not thousands, of people standing in queues, not being able to find a transportation mechanism to reach their houses. Walking thousands of kilometers, not thousands, maybe hundreds of kilometers to get to their house. We also saw a condition where these migrant workers were forced to pay rent, then leave their houses, walk towards their houses. Again, they were walking towards houses because they had into conditions which were very, very poor, in the sense that they had left their houses because they did not find jobs in these rural areas. So we see the exodus taking place. In this exodus, we also see certain tragedies taking place. For example, we had the 16 workers die in Aurangabad, the train incident that took place. The workers simply slept on the railway track and the train ran over them. They never imagined the train would come. There was an incident with a truck which was carrying workers that met with an accident. 30 migrant workers died in that accident. Workers therefore had a lot to lose in this pandemic. We also see the issue of things like what is it that pay as towards the workers as by the government in terms of the schemes that were there in place. Did the government respond? Instead of saying, for example, as an election manifesto saying 50 will be dropped into your account, the government is not even in a position to drop 10,000 rupees into the bank accounts of a lot of workers and farmers who are around. The Pradhan Mantri Kissan Nidhi, which says that you need to drop in, you could have dropped in 6,000 to 10,000 rupees for a. These were the schemes that were in place, but we realized that even ration that was supposed to be given 2 million farmers have not yet reached them. Let's see, this is the real scenario that is there. There are serious issues with food security. As far as the food security is concerned, we have 3 times more than what is the government requirement to be kept in the food warehouses. But we still see workers, farmers die because of hunger. There's another issue that we have. We have health workers, policemen who are the COVID issue, and instead of taking care of things like making PPE kits or taking care of their health insurance, the government is doing like putting people who are working in these hospitals back in those hospitals to take care of COVID patients. So we are seeing some very serious problem. We also saw Dr. Viju Krishnan talk about the governments using this pandemic as a way of bringing in labor reforms. We saw Dr. Viju Krishnan talking about 44 labor laws being converted to 4 labor codes. Also see the change in labor laws that talk about moving from an 8-hour work schedule to a 12-hour work schedule. That's a 45-hour work schedule to a 70-hour work schedule per week. Housing sector. What is it that the state and the center is doing about providing proper houses to individuals, to workers, to farmers? A lot of things have been promised in terms of the housing security that was there, but nothing seems to be coming up in terms, real houses that are required for people to stay in. Many countries in the world are taking this as an opportunity to bring back the state in a big way, to take care of very basic things like education, health, infrastructure. And on the contrary, what we see with the state of India is that the central government is using this as an opportunity to privatize many of the things that are being done, areas and education and things like that. What is the way forward? Dr. Viju Krishnan was the state of Kerala as a model state. He spoke about the public distribution system that is there in place. They were in a position to hand out rations to 8.7 million people. And he said that apart from this, there were ways in which, or they were handing out ration kits that had over 12 items that would be required for a person in a family to live in for about 10 days or so. There were many forms of pensions being handed out to the people belonging not just to the workers, but to farmers and to the other unorganized sector workers. So that's another thing that the state of Kerala has done with respect to bringing up this issue. He also said that the state of Kerala was in a position to get up a volunteers army to fight and bring up a condition where people could live properly in the pandemic. The state of Kerala is also the state where 70% of the country's labor camps are placed. He also spoke about community kitchen that were doing a great deal of goodwill in terms of cooking food it to people who are not in a position to cook food for themselves. So these are things that Dr. Viju Krishnan focused on through the 45-minute presentation that he had. I conclude with this. It is a very extensive presentation. I was not in a position to capture a lot of things because I was offline for some time. Thank you, sir. Now we will move on to the question answer session. Ms. Maria, can you ask the first question?
Yes, yeah. Sir, first question. Do you think the decentralization of the healthcare system in Kerala was a contributing factor to their excellent response to this pandemic approach for other states?
Yeah, actually, very correctly pointed out. Okay. One is that's something Kerala has been following, and in a systematic manner, the health facilities have been upgraded. The more modern facilities and scientific facilities coming in. And it has to be noted that that had called for all district hospitals to be privatized. Kerala refused to do it. And today, if Kerala to deal with this pandemic in an impeccable manner, this is one reason how from the primary health centers onwards, district hospitals, everything has been upgraded to give better services to the masses. So I think that is something which today is winning a lot of applause. And even a BJP ruled state of Karnataka, the health minister, similarly Maharashtra health minister, and speaking to the Kerala health minister, and Maharashtra doctors and health workers from Kerala to help dealing with the pandemic in Mumbai. So already I think about 50-member team has gone there. That shows that there is a raw healthcare system in Kerala, and that is also due to the will of the government and due to the orientation of the government towards a pro-people kind of an approach.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So next question. As large number of migrant workers had moved back to their respective states from Karnataka, the construction and other industries are hit very bad. There are measures to bring back the workers, and there are talks of paying them 3 times of their wages. Your thoughts on this?
See, actually the construction workers, they're exploited in a big way. Huge number of workers are in the construction sector, infrastructure development and so on. And they have long working hours, living conditions are not good, and neither are the wages adequate to the needs of the time. We also found an instance when trains were arranged from Bengaluru to Bihar and other regions. Some of construction companies, they intervened with the government, and those trains were cancelled, and it required some protest and all that before these trains were restarted. They didn't want the workers to go back. So the tendency now, given that the labor rights are further being curtailed, is to have more hours of work, 12 hours of work, and the wage to be reduced because employment opportunities are lesser, citing that there is every possibility that there'll be an effort to further working class. Like you are mentioning about 3 times increase in wage, if that is coming in, that is it is still welcome. We are saying at least in a month, a worker should earn at least 18,000, not be below that, and it should be linked to the inflation and revised every year according to the increase in prices. So if there is a actual talk going about increasing the wages 3 times, which then I think it is a positive development, but I have not come across so far. I don't think the capitalist sections are actually come up with such magnanimous decisions from their side is expected.
So I'll ask you the next question. The next question is about freshers getting jobs. The question says, do you think it is going to be possible for freshers to find jobs as either as UG or PG students?
Yeah, this is surely students are a concerned lot. One is how will they finish their education in a without much hurdles? How will they equip to get good jobs in coming times? That is a very natural concern of every student who is graduating or just about to look for employment. I mentioned earlier that the unemployment rate is huge, 27%. Never before, I think, we have gone to this high rate of unemployment. in terms of jobs being available and the approach of the government, where they are further withdrawing from public sector companies and all are being privatized, there are going to be the number of jobs are going to shrink. That is one consequence of which is going to happen because of the policies that are being. But there would be some jobs which would be the work hours would be more, the pay will be lesser. So you see, after doing computer science and BSc computer science or MCA and so on, one would be paid so low that it would not be enough to meet the scenario which is likely to come. Someone that, like someone rightly pointed, it would be near just that there would be some small wages, but it would be just minimal wages. So it is a dismal scenario as far as employment is concerned. Surely there would be some jobs, but with the huge number of graduates, the people who graduate every year, a large number of youth, and we say it is the youth dividend that India has. Unfortunately, it is of the government over the, not just this government, even the earlier government, has led to a scenario wherein the possibility of gainful employment is something is reducing and further.
So the next question is, has the exodus of migrants, workers from agrarian heartlands of India due to abuse, exploitation and helplessness in the hands of the upper caste, Jat groups class and the indirect support of government to these groups changed as of now?
So actually, you see, the exodus so far, if I'm talking about the pandemic and lockdown period, is more because of the extreme insecurity it created, that there was no employment, so there is no earning, total loss of income. So one is unable to pay any rent or buy the food for feeding the family. In such a circumstance, workers feel more better with back home. So rather than due to some caste-based oppression or exploitation, it is due to the manner in which the government has totally left them to fend for themselves. That has led to this. Though government, the Prime Minister made statements like no one should be charged rent and all that. Those are things which could not be ensured. In such a circumstance, they have been forced to flee. In some areas, yes, the people, the richer class or the high caste, so-called high caste elements, also using the scenario of fear of the disease, also have led to ensuring that certain sections of the oppressed communities are forced to move away from those areas. We have some such stories also. So that is something, that is why I was mentioning that we need to strengthen social solidarity. Those divisions on caste lines and discrimination on caste lines, on racial lines, all that has to go. You see the kind of that are coming up in against racism in USA. The huge turnout that is happening in protests against the killing that took place recently. I think that kind of a solidarity is the need of the hour. A broadest possible unity of all sections, toiling masses, of all oppressed, is what is required now.
So next question is about the rhetoric of banging plates, showering flowers, and those incidents that took place at the end of every round of the pandemic or the lockdowns that were announced. Question is, are these meant to hide the inefficiency of the government in
Yeah,
power.
if you remember the 2019 election campaign slogan of the BJP, Modi hai to mumkin hai. If Modi is there, anything is possible, was the slogan. That uh, uh, image has been broken by the manner in which the pandemic was handled. And the dismal state of the health facilities and so on also exposed it further. And it is in the last 5 years has aggressively pursued privatization and liberalization. It is in such a situation that this pandemic has struck, and they have been clueless in handling it. So to divert the attention, this kind of, for instance, the banging of plates and such spectacles of flashing mobile lights and so on. In what way has it changed the lives of the people who are in the forefront of fighting against the pandemic? In what way has it changed the life of the farmers or the workers or the poor? Have they been given food? Have they all got food for as much as required? Is there any income? Has it in any way helped to improve the economic situation? Unless there is purchasing power, that is why we are talking about only when there is a purchasing power with the people, that there could be demand created, and the creation of a demand is required for ensuring that the economy overcomes the present crisis. Unfortunately, that has not happened. It is surely done to divert the attention from all these.
The next question is about tax. The next question is about taxation.
Yeah.
The question that is asked is, will there be tax expected and new COVID tax be imposed as the treasury is depleted? Further, will the corporates be given a free hand as we see in the case of agricultural land directly from farmers? 72 hours per week will further lead to unquestioned exploitation.
Yeah, I think it is more a statement. And
Yes.
as far as the taxation is concerned, you see, in a time when crude oil prices and the steep fall in oil prices across the globe, it gives a lot of scope for maneuvering the situation and to address an economic crisis, economic recession-like situation. However, what has this government done? It has increased the excise duty in this circumstance. Even the are not petrol or diesel, the rates are increasing in this particular time. So the burden is again on the common man. That is the approach of the government. But what is happening as far as the companies are concerned? Huge tax concessions, waivers of loan is being done for the companies. Has any single company come forward saying that we are willing to pay more tax for the dealing with this pandemic? We are going to, in any way, contribute in this direction to deal with the crisis. That is only what has happened is a PM Cares, a new kind of a fund has been set up, which is total lack of transparency. You don't know how much money has come into it. You don't. Nothing has been allotted from it. You earlier had the Prime Minister Relief Fund. Now that is the only thing which has come. So taxation in different ways for the man, increasing duties, and even the GST. States have not got the share of the GST so far. The states are in the forefront of the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. How are they going to deal with it? That is another crisis that we have. We are going to face.
So the next question is do you think this is the right time to revisit labor laws? Would it be possible for a country like India to relook the way the labor laws are laid? Because we have seen bringing down or quashing some of the labor laws that are there. is it the right time to really look at labor laws? Like many states, many countries in the world, like Spain and many of the countries in Europe, have looked at bringing in, they're consolidating their hold over things like education, health, especially health. Do you think it is the time to look at laws, amend them, change them, and things like that, in favor of laborers?
Yeah, I think you see when the Great Depression in 1929-30 led to a huge crisis globally. Then there were some welfare measures suggested by economists like John Maynard and others, which called for much greater state intervention and much greater public investment in for social sector in social sector and so on. That was the time when also there was talk of more benefits for the working class. There were some contexts of the so-called communist threat, which probably also conditioned this kind of a response. You had the New Deal in America talking about social security and so on. That could be one that is the kind of an approach one would have expected in this crisis. India is a country with huge population. It's almost going to cross China and become as the most populous country in the world. A lot of them in poverty, in hunger. So in such a situation, one would have expected the government to try and come up with some confidence building measures for the working class, for the farmers, and so on. Unfortunately, that has not come. That even I found that there are some people, Canada also listening here. Earlier, Professor Berin was also mentioning that someone from Canada is here. Countries like Canada also have come up with few steps to deal with this crisis to ensure that the workers are not losing their earnings. Some steps in that direction. That is something which we expected at this particular time. Unfortunately, very unilaterally, without discussing even with the central trade unions, these policies are being pushed through. And today, or even the trade unions affiliated to the RSS and the BJP, who are their own trade unions, are questioning these policies being implemented by the government. It is not just the left and other trade unions which are there. Even the BJP affiliated or RSS affiliated trade unions are also questioning them. So this should have been a time for reforms in favor of the working class, and surely if such reforms had come in favor of the working class, that would have also led to a transformation in the country, in their own role, the working class role in building the nation. We would have seen a different upcoming.
Yes, Marie ma'am, you can ask your question.
Yeah, thank you, Dept. Vijay sir, if you have a time, can I ask you one more question? Many of our participants wanted to know your views and suggestions to overcome this pandemic. Have the measures taken by government is efficient, or do they have to be improved?
See, I did mention, I think my lecture had some points in that direction. There has been a total loss of incomes. I think there are few steps which are short term, that is immediately required. There's a complete loss of incomes for a large section of our country. We need to have some income support given to them. Only then a demand is generated because there is purchasing power, and that will only help in reviving the economy. That is the first and foremost. Second, we must ensure that the times in times of COVID pandemic have more deaths due to hunger. Rather, none should die of hunger. So you must ensure that all who require food grains and other essentials should be a kit like in the Kerala case should be provided. That is something which has to, these are short-term measures which are required. I already mentioned about loan waiver for farmers and the poor. That is something which is required. And for agriculture workers under the Rural Employment Guarantee, at least 300 rupees per day as unemployment wage. These are some things I said as short-term measures. As long-term measures is what I think much greater stress is required, because this is the pandemic is we have a crisis at hand now, but it is always that there could be recurrence of different crises in future. So we need a system wherein health, education, food security, social security, into all these, there would be much greater government spending. Rather, universal health, universal education, universal public distribution system, and universal social security is something which has to be ensured in the long run. Along with that, in terms of the overcoming the crisis, as far as agriculture is concerned, we have been saying, as opposed to the corporatization of agriculture, where big agribusinesses are being allowed to take over farmland and so on, you require cooperative agriculture, much supporting it. The central government should come forward, the state government should come forward to support that. That is required. As far as labor section, the working class is concerned, social security for all, social security pensions for the aged and the physically disabled and so on, that is also something which is required. This set of policies required a much greater spending intervention from the central government. That is required in the long run. So you have to strengthen our healthcare in a major way too. 72 hours of work, which was, I think that was raised, surely lead to much greater exploitation. You just ask a question to yourself whether you would be in a position to work 12 hours a day. And the earlier slogan of 8 hours of work, 8 hours of leisure, and no cutting was a much thought out slogan put forward by the Chicago martyrs. I think today there is all the more the need to.
Maria ma'am, any more questions? Please go ahead. We still have time.
Okay, one more.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so can I ask one more question, Dave?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, sir. Vijay, sir. What are the major changes will be there after this pandemic, and in what areas we can expect changes?
See, that is a question which will require another lecture, actually.
Yes,
the pandemic itself, one is, you see, we have seen the kind of changes that has come in terms of wearing a mask, in terms of hand sanitizer and so on. These are some things which have come newly. The other changes which are required, whether it will come given depends a lot on the approach of the government. But if it doesn't come, surely it will lead to a situation wherein the people will come out in struggles for building an alternative. So that is where in a much more accessible and affordable health system, accessible education, and food security and social security, that these are some changes which are required. Unfortunately, the direction which has been government now is a pro-corporate approach, we would say, is towards corporate profiteering. So takeover of farmlands, corporates would take over farmlands, corporate would ensure the rights of the workers are snatched. That is the direction in which we are going. The health sector privatization, that is something we are facing a situation in Delhi itself. Patients going to different hospitals being turned away. In a pandemic like this, that cannot happen. Every person should be given the treatment that you don't have. The number of doctors per depending on for how many people doctor. I think the global standards, when will we reach that? These and issues of human development, that needs to take precedence now. Whether that will do, a lot depends on of the day, and a lot depends on whether all of us can unite to bring about that change.
Mr. Dav Fod, are there any more questions?
No, sir. The questions have been exhausted.
I saw one Bhavani Das saying some question before 13 minutes before. If you
Can you
have
please
not
look into
answered,
it? Dav sir, can you please look into Ms. Bhavani Das, question 30 minutes ago. Mr. Neeraj, technical team, can you please help in retrieving the question? Take on board.
Yes, sir. Sir, give me a minute, sir.
Sure.
there's
Good
one
evening,
question
sir.
by Father Rex Angelo also.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Bhav.
Please
Can I
type
ask
the
my question?
Please type the question, madam. Let's follow the protocol. Please type the question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Madam Maria and Professor Dav.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please take the question only in the written form.
Yes.
Technical team also look into question from one Father Rex from Andhra Pradesh.
Sir, Bhavani's question.
Yeah.
Can I read out?
Yeah.
Okay, our question is, now for this COVID-19 situation, the UG graduates should take up job or should do the master degree, which will be beneficial for them, doing or searching for job.
See, in my opinion,
Yes, sir.
an undergraduate after graduation should go in for higher studies. If there is no immediate emergency in terms of the situation in the house or something which forces one to go for work. There could be some scenario wherein for work experience briefly, but I would say people should study more. That is the approach I have.
Okay. Father Rex has asked this question. Most migrant workers are exposed to caste-based ill treatment, which has forced them to leave to another state for job opportunities. Now that they have gone back to the respective states, will they escape from such humiliation? Are there any rehab measures to promote their welfare? Are there any public agencies to look into their grievances?
Father has asked a very important question. Actually, it is both ways. They have faced caste discrimination, and that there is some migration, but there is also now who are migrating back to their hometowns. I have also in some areas we have been hearing of facing discrimination on caste lines. That is something in terms of in different states that we have been hearing that, but no project in terms of rehabilitating them, the most oppressed sections, is there so far. Rather, what is happening, if you take the case of the tribal population, in the entire lockdown period, even able to collect the minor forest produce like mahua, honey, and other produce and market it. So already living in precarious condition, they have even been deprived of that. That is the situation. Over the last few years, we have also seen the dilution of the SCS Atrocity Act and so on, which has happened. There has been a lot of diversion of funds of the SCST sub-plan. A lot of funds have been diverted for other things. In terms of housing also, the condition of the SCST Dalits is much worse than the other sections of society. Unfortunately, nothing adequate has been done in that direction. This is something, when we are talking about a social solidarity, this is something which all of us have to be concerned about, and all of us have to work for elimination of these kind of discrimination. Thank you, Father, for the question.
I think we have exhausted and we've come to the end of the session. Mr. Neeraj Savio will give you some instruction with respect to the feedback now, after which you can move out of this meeting.
So the feedback forms shall be sent now in 10 or 5 minutes. However, please make sure to fill the feedback form within 2 hours, as after 2 hours, the deadline for filling it shall be expiring. You need to fill the feedback form to be eligible to receive an e-certificate. Also, some of the participants have joined in through names that are different from what they have registered. I would request friends to, while filling the feedback form, to put the name through which they joined in brackets. That's all.
Okay, I'll take a minute. We have come to the end of the first international webinar hosted by the Department of Industrial Relations, St. Joseph's College, Bengaluru. On behalf of my principal, Reverend Dr. Victor Lobo, SJ, my head of the department, Dr. Berin Lukas, the coordinators, Mr. Dav Fod, faculty, St. Joseph's Evening College, our own sister institution, and my colleague Maria David. I sincerely thank the technical team consisting of students, that humanities, they're not students from any computer science class, for arranging this webinar. Very, very to our own distinguished alumni and our former faculty, Dr. DR.VIJOO KRISHNAN, for taking time off, how busy a person you are, and for answering all our questions. Madam Berin Lukas, can you please address before we sign out? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, DR.VIJOO, for being there for us and giving us this very, very informative session. And we wish you the very best, because as a student and as a member of the CPIM, you are doing excellent, which is very proud of you, and we are honored to have you here with us today. So
Thank you.
I hope you will take back good memories of the session. And looking at the feedback, DR.VIJOO, your talk was informative, excellent, and I am sure our audience will be able to take back with them certain things that they will keep with them for a very, very long time. Thank you so much, DR.VIJOO.
Thank you.